So, this month inside the Elevated Life Club, the topic was all about overcoming trauma and healing your inner child. We basically shared tools to be able to tap in and reconnect and rekindle that relationship. And what it seemed to be interesting is that everyone, whether they realized it or not, needed something from this training. They needed to be reminded of that inner child that once was playful and daydreamed and was destructive as well. So, on today's podcast, we are sharing 5 signs your inner child needs healing so that you can embody your whole self. Hey, we're Britt and Chris Carmichael, and you're listening to the Elevated Life Podcast. Throughout the 16 years we've been together, we've never ceased in our endless quest to better ourselves.
We've studied top experts, philosophers, and gurus. After years of personal self-experimentation and working with thousands of clients, we've found the tools for shifting your beliefs, moving through fears, and developing a positive mindset that aligns with your authenticity, integrity, and soul purpose, regardless of your past.
If you're ready for a breakthrough, then you're in the right place because we're here to empower you to take control of your life with simple mindset shifts that create radical transformation.
We'll be diving into topics like personal growth, health, philosophy, spirituality, relationships, success, and mindfulness. We don't shy away from the taboo topics like sex, hypnosis, meditation, and exploring altered states of consciousness.
So create some space for yourself and get comfy. It's time to become the badass you were born to be. You know, they say practice what you preach. Well, when we were teaching our live masterclass on overcoming trauma, it just so happened to be the same day that we thought our almost 15-year-old Chihuahua was going to have to pass. We thought for sure that was going to be the last day of his life. And it was very interesting to have to show up and teach on healing trauma while actually going through it ourselves. Talk about practicing what you preach.
Yeah, a lot of times it feels like we go through things solo. It's just us and no one else is going through the same things we are. And life is so hard. But it's interesting because we all go under the same traumas. We all fall into the same things. Some of us obviously more than others. Some of us had different kinds of parents. We grew up with different backgrounds. Some of us had people that were more strict on us, our teachers, our friends, our siblings, and it's great to realize that there's so much commonality in how much and in the ways in which we suffer. Because when you start going through things, you start to realize that there is a lot more support than you know. And the person who really is always going to support you through your journey, the person that's always going to be there and always needs to show up is going to be you. Because as a child, you didn't know that. You were always waiting for your parent to come save you. You're always waiting for, hopefully you had the bigger brother if you got in a fight on the playground. Maybe the bigger brother's going to come up and they're going to protect you. There's always going to be someone who's going to protect you. But in reality, as you get older, the person who's going to come and protect you is you. And so the only way to really go through healing, which is the journey that we're all on, is to go back and re-nurture that younger self that we have and to remind them that it's us now. You have a teammate in me. We are here to do this life experience together. And I'm going to protect you and I'm going to care for you and I'm going to do all the things that you have set up expectations for other people to do. Now we're going to do it ourselves. And that's why this type specifically of healing and this type of opening up old wounds and reassessing them and realizing that you've already gone through them, you've already grown through them. And if you can go back and mend them and repatch them to the way they're supposed to work so that you can integrate them, it becomes part of the greatest process that you can ever do. And it's also one of the greatest gifts that you can give other people because you show up as a different being from that day forward.
So whether it's a little T or a big T trauma, you have the opportunity today to start to nurture yourself, to give yourself the self-love that you're sometimes craving outside of yourself. And the interesting thing when it comes to these traumas is that we build up this defense mechanism. We build an ego based around these painful experiences in our past. And it's our job as an adult, like Chris said, one, to take responsibility, but to also recognize that you can change and manipulate those boundaries that once were there to protect us, and move them and transform them in a way that still creates boundaries but doesn't keep you stuck.
So let's talk about the first sign your inner child needs healing. And that is you have repeating patterns that are coming up in your life. And I'm not talking about seeing a same number. You're not seeing 1111 on the clock and those kind of things. I'm talking about negative patterns. Patterns are always going to happen in your life, and a lot of those are going to be okay because they're there to help you. They're there to propel you forward. But I'm talking about negative patterns. The way you really notice this is how it shows up in your relationships in life. You see, there are going to be some people, and I'm sure you know these people, you may be one yourself, where they continuously get in and out of the exact same type of relationship. It'll be a different person. It can be in a different place. They can move to Hawaii, but that same relationship is going to show up again and again and again. And a lot of times it's because they are creating relationships like they had when they were younger and then trying to patch them and fix them again. Or they're trying to have a parent be that person so this person emulates my father or my mother, and so I'm going to date them and I'm going to reestablish the relationship that I had with them and maybe build one that's better. And a lot of times that doesn't work. So look into your life. Where is it that you feel yourself stuck? Where is that you are seeing negative patterns that keep showing up? Is it in your work life? Is it the way that you act with yourself? Like, where is that pattern showing up?
And this form of self-sabotage is actually trying to protect you. As I mentioned earlier, our ego builds up these unconscious response to any kind of pain. And if you're on this repeating pattern, your ego gets triggered and goes, oh, I know where this is going. I've experienced this before. And your ego basically kind of rears up unconsciously so that you self-sabotage in these patterns and you don't even realize you're doing it.
Gosh, this is so important, talking about patterns, we always have to bring the subconscious mind into the equation because so much of what we do is habitual. Whatever you typically learn the first time, and it's because the mind likes to be lazy. I mean, we all kind of like to be lazy. If we find a way that works, even if it sucks, and you notice this in older people, I notice when they were in the crib, and they wanted someone's attention, or they wanted to be fed, or they wanted to be burped, or they used the bathroom, or whatever it was, they screamed and cried. And some people as adults still scream and cry when something goes wrong, when they need attention. You see these people all the time. And so it's so important to realize that it's this habitual thing that we're doing. So one way to be super aware of this is when you do something and you look into the reactions of other people and you're like, man, they are reacting negatively toward me. Like what I'm doing right now is making them visibly upset. Start asking yourself, is this the pattern of behavior that I want to be doing? And is this going to give me the outcome that I want to have? And when you can have that kind of awareness, you start to unlock the patterns. Because normally we just go through life and it seems like things are just happening to us, but that's not right. It's people and the world responding to the way that we're thinking and the actions that we're taking with our bodies. And so if you can change that, if you can get in between one of the movements of the process, one of the pieces of the pattern, then you can start to interrupt it and you can start to change life in the way that you want it to be.
So the next sign that shows your inner child needs healing is that you are lacking confidence. You don't know who you are. You feel like you have a small sense of self-worth. Your boundaries might be mushy, or you might even show up as a perfectionist. I don't know about you, but I had a highly critical parent, and because of that, it resulted in a lack of always judging myself, always being hypercritical towards myself because I learned it from a parent, which in turn made me feel like I lacked confidence and I was looking for other people's approval. So maybe you've had a highly critical parent and that has made you feel like you're constantly trying to win their love or their approval, which then you go into that same type of relationship. Here's that repeating pattern with yourself, and you basically are fighting to get your own love and approval, but you never seem to allow yourself that satisfaction.
And it's interesting when you think about this. Think about the parent. Think about what they're trying to do. It's not normally the parent's trying to be a dick. Most parents aren't like, hey, I can't wait to be a jerk to my kid today. It's like, hey, I want to give them the best opportunity that I didn't have. And so a lot of people don't know a lot of methods to do that. And so they default to criticism. Like, hey, you do this better, man. Hey, you got to work on this harder. Hey, you're not giving this all of your attention. I wish you'd be more motivated this way. And they push and they push and they push and they push. But sometimes as kids, we just need to relax. We just want to play. We just want to, get some squand and work with that. Get a Rubik's Cube out. Just do something that's really
light bright.
Yeah, get something that's really the easy bake oven.
Oh my gosh,
get some,
tastes like plastic.
Hula hoop. Yeah, just get something that's really basic and play. And so sometimes they were actually trying to help us, but their need to control our lives messes with us. And so what we have to do is a lot of times to really get inner child work to fulfill itself is to make sure that you're always adding the component of forgiveness along with it. I'm not talking about forgetting. I'm not talking about necessarily letting someone off the hook, but I am talking about having a sense of forgiveness, because a lot of times people weren't trying to hurt you. A lot of times it's about their upbringing. It's about the way that they feel. And so this brings us perfectly into number 3, which is that you find it hard to trust people. You find it hard, especially the big problem here is if you have parents that were big on punishment, especially physical punishment, what often would happen is the parent's going to spank the kid or whatever it is, get the switch out. Is the switch for you?
I was thinking beat the child.
Beat the child. Beat the child, spank the child.
When you said spank, I was like, no, I was beaten.
Well, see, and you have to think about it. So here's what happens. Here's where we all get messed up. And that is if you had parents that were disciplinarians, which a lot of us do. I mean,
Yeah.
And when they spank you, when they do whatever it is, afterward they feel guilty because they're like, hey, I just knocked my kid around a little bit. And so what do they say to try and make up for it? They say, I love you. I did this because I love you. And so in our little brains, we start to equate pain and love as being the same thing because the emotions are happening at the same time. And it puts us in such a weird world as we start to get older and as we start to get in relationships, especially intimate ones. It's hard to start to separate that. Like, what did the parent mean? But if you go back and think about it as an adult, you can start to figure this out. You have the adult mind now. It's not the child being naive and innocent and looking out into the world, not being able to figure anything out. Because I've been around people's kids before, and some of them are little shits, and some of you wish like you needed to take them back behind the barn and give them a little whooping. That's the feeling.
They need the attitude adjuster like I have.
But that's the feeling that you can have, because the kids are screaming, they're throwing stuff on the wall, they're just going berserk, and you can see how as parents, especially when you've been working all day, especially when you're tired, especially you've been staying up a lot lately, especially when you're trying to make something happen in your own life, you can see how it's tough mentally for parents to deal with it. I mean, you sign up for a huge responsibility when you become a parent, and a lot of us lack the education and the knowledge of what we need to do in those kind of circumstances. So a lot of times you have to work on that forgiveness aspect to make some of this really, really start to sink in.
And it's hard to trust your own intuition when you've gone through that confusion of receiving the pain and punishment followed by love. So you're kind of in this state of limbo, and that confusion can result in you not even trusting yourself. Especially if you had a parent that took their love away. So if you displeased them, they didn't show you that unconditional love. So that can also result in a lack of trust. Which leads us into our 4th sign that your inner child needs healing, and that is that you are a constant people pleaser. You are always looking for that approval and validation from people outside of yourself. Maybe you didn't receive it from a parent, so you're in this pattern of trying to seek that love and approval from anyone outside of yourself. All of this to basically learn that you can give it to yourself. Like Chris talked about, you can nurture and reparent that inner child. And we recognize that we need to turn that love inward when we're trying to give it to everyone else outside of ourselves and they're not accepting it.
The big deal here, the red flag for me and kind of the warning sign that goes off that I ask people, especially women, I find a lot more women fall into the people-pleasing category, although it can be men just as easy. And it typically depends on what the parenting style was. A lot of times, if your parent required you to be a certain way, if they kind of diminished who you were as an individual or wanted you to be a specific way around other people, then you learn how to people please because you got rewarded. You got kind things said about you, you got a better seat at the table, maybe you got more dessert. I mean, it can be really basic how kids are rewarded. And it's important to ask people this one question, which is what I always ask. What's your self-care look like? That's it. That's all I need to know. Are you a people pleaser? If your self-care is high, I mean, the likelihood of you people pleasing is much lower.
No, you'll people serve.
People serve. And see, that's a different way of showing up because you still want to be nice to people. This isn't like an excuse of like, hey, let's go be an ass when we go out.
Asshole isn't the opposite of people pleasing.
No, it's just, so I'm showing up. I'm showing up and saying things to you, not so that you'll like me. Like, I'm not trying to get that from somebody. At least not consciously.
Because that's conditional.
Yeah, and that's like, well, I'll only show up if you'll do these kind things for me. And so now we can start playing this game, and I'm not interested in those kinds of games. I want to just show up just to show up. And if, some magic happens between us, that's fantastic. And if some magic doesn't, that's fine too, because I don't have the expectation. A lot of times people are always putting expectations on their friends or even strangers. And like, if you don't wave at me, if you don't say hi to me in the elevator, I'm okay with that. Maybe you're having a hard day, you don't want to talk. That's fine.
It used to bother me so much.
I know. And you have to think that some people are going through things. Sometimes stuff's on their mind. Maybe they're playing a scenario in their head. Maybe they're practicing for a speech they're going to give later. Like, we don't know what a person's going through. And so I don't just try to invoke my will on what they should do when certain things happen. I mean, yeah, there's certain nice courtesies. I always try to hold the door open for people and things like that. But if someone doesn't do it, that's okay too. I realize people are in their own world. And so a lot of times, if you're just a people pleaser and you're just constantly looking for someone else to validate you as a human being, it's going to be super tough when we were talking about on number 2 with confidence. Confidence comes from you being able to pick and choose what it is that you want to do and not feeling bad about that, not having the guilt slip in, not feeling shameful, like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I didn't do that. Like, those thoughts shouldn't be running through they don't need to be running through your head. It's not going to help you do better things in the future. The really thing that you want to start doing is seeing people through the eyes of just love, not seeing through people of the eyes of how much can they love and give to me. That's a totally different thing altogether, because when you put up that battle, when you go with the, well, you better give and I better receive, or it better be the other way around, you break the cycle. Like, you have to allow people to love and give freely. That's what love is. It's letting go of all the restraints. Too often we wrap people in these chains of our own bondage, and we don't realize that. And then it makes it hard to love them because they have to do this list of all these things that we've come up with, or we're not happy with them. And then we end up withholding sex. We withhold love. We don't nurture and support them. We don't give them the kind of physical presence that they need in their life. And now our relationship's a wreck, when all we had to do instead was start to love ourselves, and then it makes it much easier to love everybody else.
Snaps and sparkle magic, Christopher Carmichael. As I was listening to you, the other word that I thought of for people pleaser was manipulator.
Yes, you see a lot of narcissists will use this, and this is why a lot of times women get bamboozled in the beginning of relationships, because the guy comes in hot and heavy. He does every single thing right. He looks the right way. He says the right words, and it's just to get in the bedroom for a little bit. A lot of times people are used to saying certain things because it bypasses other people's critical factors. Allows you to sort of slip in there and feel a certain way. And you have to always be checking that. You have to be checking your emotions and looking if you feel alone all the time. Like, if you feel alone, that's a huge part of being a people pleaser. It also rolls us right into number 5, which is the fear of abandonment. This, to me, is one of the biggest issues. Fear of abandonment comes back always to the first fear and the only real fear, and that is fear of being unlovable. Because if you think inside that you are unlovable, the master fear, then you'll always feel like the person's going to abandon you. The person coming from strength is more of the same on confidence. You always hear about the person who's confident walks into a room and it doesn't matter that everybody likes them. Same with this fear of abandonment. Can you be in a relationship where if the person left, it wouldn't cripple you emotionally? Can you do that? That's where you don't fear the abandonment anymore. You think to yourself, I'm going to have an amazing life. The Kanye quote, I'm dope and I do dope shit. Like,
my life is dope.
Yeah, my life is dope and I do dope shit. Like, can you feel that way inside so that the person that you're going to tag along and enjoy life with also feels that way? Be like, my partner is living a dope life and I want to be part of it. I need to be on this team.
You're welcome.
That's the feeling that we want to have. That's a feeling we want to have with our employees. That's a feeling that you want to have with your kiddos. It's a, man, look how cool my life is. Would you like to jump on this train with me and enjoy some of this too? Like, that's such a powerful position to be in. That's not people pleasing. That is being able to set up boundaries. That is feeling confident. That is knowing inside who you really are.
And you can never be abandoned if you are with yourself. And so that's why developing your self-love is the most important work you can do on this planet at this time. Strengthening your relationship to your soul, to your higher self, to the source energy, whatever you want to call it, I don't really care. It is prioritizing your relationship with you. So if you've been sitting here listening thinking, holy smokes, I have some work to do, you are not alone, and we're here to help. Inside the club this month, we taught on overcoming trauma and healing your inner child. We shared the tools to be able to tap back into the power of play and champion your inner child.
So if this is the kind of work that you know you need to be doing, if you are ready to step up as a parent, as a boss, as a friend, or if you just want to come back and say, you know what, the relationship I have with myself, I know is the most important one, and I really need to work on that to live a fantastic life, come let us serve you in the club. The meditations, the subconscious work that we do is so extremely powerful. We had people crying, and we know this is a heavy topic. We get it. Come in and feel supported because we want to help you work through this. In order for you to have the best year next year of your life, a lot of this is going to have to get handled. And now is the time to do that.
Normally, you would sign up for the club at theelevatedlifeclub.com, but because you're a podcast listener, we want to offer you an awesome deal. You can sign up to become an elevator for only $7 and you'll access the club for 14 days. You can get this special promo deal by going to theelevatedlifeclub.com/trial.
We look forward to catching you next week on the podcast or serving you over in the club. And until then, we'll catch you next time. Peace.
Thanks so much for tuning in to the Elevated Life podcast. If you loved this episode, please share that love by leaving us a 5-star review and spreading the good vibes on social. You can tag us at The Elevated Life Club. Want more wisdom from us? Become an elevator by joining us inside our monthly membership club at theelevatedlifeclub.com to discover mindset upgrades, lifestyle hacks, and spiritual tools to elevate your soul.
Each month features a live group coaching masterclass, guided meditations, yoga practice, and more to help you transform your life one step at a time.
It has all the tools, coaching, and community you need to level up, progress every month, and keep going in every area of your life consistently over the long term.
Join us in the club and start your transformation today by signing up at theelevatedlifeclub.com.